I don't know when I first realized Ryan had changed, but it was there, subtle at first, then undeniable. My brother used to be ordinary in the best sense of the word. Simple clothes, predictable habits, the kind of man who blended into the background at family gatherings. But lately there was something different about him. His confidence was almost theatrical, his laughter louder than usual, his pockets never empty. I'd catch him slipping folded bills into his wallet, like money wasn't something he had to think twice about anymore. At first, I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe he'd gotten a raise at work, maybe a side hustle had finally paid off. But then the late-night calls began. He'd lower his voice, slip outside, and talk for hours in the driveway, pacing back and forth under the streetlight. Whenever I happened to appear, he'd hang up abruptly or laugh nervously, as though I'd caught him doing something forbidden. And then there were the whispers in town. Nothing concrete, just offhand remarks. Neighbors wondering how Ryan could suddenly afford a new car, relatives joking about his mystery fortune. It should have been harmless, but the unease in my chest grew heavier with each passing day. Something didn't add up. One afternoon, I walked past his room while he was out, and his laptop chimed with an incoming email. The screen lit up with the subject line, "Property Sale Agreement." My stomach dropped. Property. Sale. The words swirled in my head like a storm. My parents had left us land that wasn't just valuable, but deeply sentimental. It was where we'd played as kids, where Dad taught us to ride bikes, where Mom planted her roses. The thought of selling it had never crossed my mind. I sat on his bed, paralyzed, staring at that glowing subject line. My hands shook as I opened the email. The details hit me like a knife. Ryan had already finalized the sale of a section of the land. And worse than anything, I saw my own name typed neatly at the bottom of the document. My signature, forged so precisely it almost fooled me. Almost. The betrayal was suffocating. He hadn't just gone behind my back. He had stolen my voice, my right, my trust. I wanted to storm out and scream at him, demand answers, tear the truth out of him no matter the cost. But something in me, something colder, sharper, stopped me. A voice whispered, "Not yet." That night, I sat alone in my room replaying every memory of us together. Childhood fights, shared secrets, the nights we stayed up laughing until dawn. I kept asking myself, how could he? How could my own brother carve me out of something that belonged to both of us? But beneath the pain, a seed of resolve took root. I wasn't going to confront him, not now. Ryan thought he was clever, thought he'd outsmarted me, thought I was too trusting to notice. Let him believe that. Let him bask in his little victory. Because while he was busy flaunting his new wealth and soaking in admiration, I would be preparing. Quietly, patiently. The next morning, he breezed into the kitchen with a grin plastered across his face, whistling as though life couldn't touch him. He dropped his car keys on the counter with an arrogant clatter and winked at me like we shared some private joke. I smiled back. I even asked about his night, pretended I hadn't noticed the smirk tugging at his lips when he mentioned business deals. I played my role so well, he didn't even blink. But inside, my mind was racing. If he could forge my signature once, who knew what else he was capable of? If he could betray me over land, what would stop him from betraying me over everything else? No, this wasn't just about property anymore. This was about trust, dignity, and the kind of wound that doesn't heal with apologies. That day, I began planning. I didn't tell anyone at first, not even Alina, my closest friend. The anger was too raw, too personal. Instead, I started small, listening more closely when Ryan spoke, noting down the names he mentioned, the times he disappeared, the patterns in his newfound arrogance. Every careless boast he made became ammunition. Every slip of his tongue became a breadcrumb leading me closer to the whole truth. Sometimes, late at night, I'd lie awake replaying the scene of our parents' voices in my head, reminding me of fairness, of loyalty, of family unity. They would have been devastated if they knew what Ryan had done. But that thought only steeled my resolve. If he was willing to destroy everything they built for us, then I would be willing to fight with everything I had. The strangest thing was how easily he underestimated me. He'd look at me with that brotherly condescension, convinced I was naive, soft, incapable of strategy. He didn't know I'd already seen through him. He didn't know every smile I offered was rehearsed, every nod calculated. He thought he was the puppeteer pulling the strings. But soon enough, he'd realize I'd been cutting those strings one by one in silence. And as the days passed, I began to see it clearly. This wasn't just going to be about exposing him. No, it had to be bigger than that. It had to be unforgettable. If I confronted him directly, he'd deny, twist, maybe even gaslight me into doubting what I'd seen. But if I waited, if I gathered proof so irrefutable, so devastating, then his entire facade would collapse in front of everyone. Family, friends, the community he loved to impress. Revenge wasn't going to be loud at first. It was going to be silent, precise, like water eroding stone. One drop at a time, until the whole structure came crashing down. That night, I closed my eyes with a calm I hadn't felt in weeks. Ryan thought he'd won. He thought the land was his, the money his, the game his. But he had no idea what storm was quietly gathering in the shadows. And I promised myself this. When the time came, when every piece was in place, he wouldn't just lose the land. He'd lose everything. I didn't plan on telling anyone, at least not at first. The betrayal was mine to carry, my secret storm. But secrets have weight, and after days of holding it in, I felt like I was suffocating. So one evening, I called Alina. She'd been my anchor for years, the kind of friend who didn't just listen, but understood the things I couldn't say out loud. We met at our usual cafe, the little one tucked away on Main Street with chipped tables and the smell of burnt coffee grounds. Alina slid into the seat across from me, her eyes immediately narrowing. "Something's wrong," she said before I'd even spoken. That was the thing about her. She could read me like a book I hadn't even opened. The words spilled out before I could stop them. I told her about the email, the forged signature, the land already sold without my consent. As I spoke, her face darkened, her hands clenched around her mug. "Kate," she whispered, "that's not just betrayal. That's fraud. He could go to jail for this." Her anger was sharp, immediate, like a blade drawn in the dark. "You have to confront him," she insisted. "Call him out before he does more damage. Don't give him the satisfaction of thinking he's won." But I shook my head. My voice was steady, though my insides trembled. "No. If I confront him now, he'll twist it, deny it, maybe even destroy the proof. He thinks I'm blind. Let him think that a little longer. I want him exposed when he least expects it." Alina stared at me for a long moment, then leaned back, exhaling slowly. "You've changed," she said softly. "The old Kate would have yelled, thrown him out of the house. But this Kate," she tilted her head, "this Kate scares me a little." I gave her a thin smile. "Good. He should be scared too." From that moment on, I wasn't alone. Alina became my shadow partner in silence. Together, we started gathering proof. It began at the registrar's office, a place that smelled of old paper and dust, where time itself seemed to move slower. We combed through property records, and there it was, Ryan's signature bold and smug across the transfer documents. Beside it, my forged approval, a perfect lie on official paper. I asked for copies, my hands shaking as I held the evidence. Each page felt like another betrayal, another knife twisting in my chest. But it also fueled me. Proof wasn't just power, it was control. And control was exactly what Ryan thought he had taken from me. Meanwhile, Ryan seemed to grow bolder with every passing day. He strutted through town like a king who had conquered something great, tossing money on drinks, slipping new gadgets into his pockets, as if they were nothing. At dinner with relatives, he spoke louder than everyone else, bragging about opportunities and deals without ever saying what they were. The more they admired him, the more his arrogance bloomed. And all the while, I sat across from him, smiling faintly, nodding like a dutiful sister. Every boast was another thread in the web he didn't realize he was spinning tighter around himself. One night, Alina and I spread the documents across her dining table. Her brows furrowed as she flipped through each page. "This is enough to bury him in court," she said. But you want more, don't you? I nodded. Paper is strong, but words are unforgettable. If I can catch him admitting it, if I can get him to brag about what he's done, my voice hardened. Then no one will ever doubt me. Alina looked at me like she wasn't sure whether to hug me or fear me. You're planning something big, aren't you? I met her gaze steadily. The family anniversary party is in 2 weeks. He loves the spotlight too much to miss it. And when he stands in front of everyone, when he basks in their praise, I'll tear the ground out from under him. Alina sat back, shaking her head in disbelief. Kate. That'll destroy him. In front of everyone. That's the point, I said quietly. This isn't just about me anymore. He stole from the family, from our parents' legacy. They deserve to know who he really is. The plan began to take shape piece by piece. I practiced patience like a weapon, biding my time, smiling at Ryan when he laughed, pretending I didn't notice the new gold watch on his wrist or the smug glint in his eyes. Every moment I stayed silent was another step closer to his downfall. But inside, the fire burned hotter. I'd see flashes of my parents' faces in my mind, their pride in the land they left us, the belief that family meant trust. And then I'd see Ryan smirk, the way he thought he'd won. It was gasoline on the fire. The night before the party, I sat with Alina again. She grabbed my hand, squeezing it tight. Are you ready for this? She asked. I didn't hesitate. Ready? I've been ready since the day I saw that forged signature. He has no idea what's waiting for him. And in that moment, I felt a calm settle over me. Not rage, not fear, calm. Because Ryan thought the stage was his. But what he didn't know was that the spotlight was already shifting. And when it landed, it wouldn't illuminate a hero. It would reveal a fraud. The night of the anniversary arrived with all the glitter and noise Ryan craved. The house was lit up like a stage, golden lights spilling across the lawn, laughter bubbling through the air. Relatives swarmed the living room, clinking glasses, trading stories, while Ryan drifted among them like a celebrity, shaking hands, patting backs, flashing that smug, new money grin. I stood by the window, watching him. His suit was too sharp, too polished for a man who used to grumble about wearing ties. He raised his glass to an uncle, nodded at a cousin, the spotlight wrapping around him like a crown he thought he'd earned. The arrogance rolled off him in waves, and no one else seemed to notice. But I did. Alina hovered at my side, her hand brushing mine briefly. Are you sure you're ready? She whispered. I kept my eyes on Ryan. I've never been more ready. The chatter quieted as Ryan clinked his glass, clearing his throat with practiced ease. Family, he began, smiling broadly. We're gathered tonight to celebrate what our parents built. Their love, their hard work, their legacy. And he paused dramatically, soaking in the attention. I intend to honor that legacy by leading us into a new chapter. I nearly laughed. The audacity. He was stealing from us with one hand and preaching loyalty with the other. His words dripped with performance, but the relatives leaned in, eating it up. Some even clapped softly. Ryan spread his arms, magnanimous. Our parents gave us land, yes, but more importantly, they gave us opportunity. And I've made sure that opportunity doesn't go to waste. What I've done for all of us. That was my cue. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my voice came out steady, slicing through the air like glass. For all of us? I asked loudly. Every head turned. Ryan froze for half a second, then forced a smile. Kate, he said warmly, always ready with a question. What do you mean? I stepped forward, pulling the folded papers from my bag. My hands didn't shake this time. I held them high so everyone could see. I mean this, I said. The documents you filed at the registrar's office. The ones where my name appears. Except, I snapped the page open and thrust it toward him. That isn't my signature. The room went still. You could hear the clink of a spoon being set down, the shift of feet on the carpet. Dozens of eyes swung from me to Ryan, confusion rippling across faces. Ryan's smile faltered, then returned, thinner this time. Kate, he said smoothly. What are you talking about? Of course it's your signature. We both agreed. No. I cut him off, my voice firm. We didn't. You forged my name and sold the land without my consent. A gasp echoed from somewhere in the crowd. An aunt muttered, "Forged?" while an uncle leaned forward to get a better look. Alina stepped closer, her arms crossed, her presence like a shield at my back. Ryan chuckled, but it rang hollow. "This is a misunderstanding," he said quickly. "Kate must have forgotten. We talked about it months ago." I shook my head. "Don't lie. I never agreed. And you know it." Whispers filled the room. A cousin pulled out his glasses, trying to peer at the document in my hands. Ryan's jaw tightened, though he kept the mask of charm plastered on. "Family," he said loudly, appealing to the room. "Kate's upset and I understand. These matters are complicated. But I assure you, everything was done fairly. Nothing was hidden." "Nothing hidden?" My voice cracked like a whip. "Then why didn't you mention the sale to anyone here? Why did I have to find out through a stray email?" The silence that followed was heavier this time, suspicious. Relatives exchanged uneasy glances. A grandmother shifted in her chair, frowning deeply. The warmth of celebration was draining from the room, replaced by something colder, sharper. Ryan's charm slipped another inch. His smile was strained, his hands tightening on the glass he held. "Kate," he said softly, almost condescendingly, "you're making a scene. Let's not spoil tonight with baseless accusations. We can talk later, privately." "No," I said firmly, my voice rising above his. "We'll talk now. Because this isn't just between you and me anymore. This is about the family. This is about what you've stolen from all of us." The word stolen landed like a slap. The relatives stirred, muttering louder now, their trust wobbling. Ryan's eyes flickered, a crack in his mask. Alina leaned in close, whispering in my ear, "He's cornered. Push harder." I straightened, holding the documents high again. "These papers are proof enough." But I let my voice trail off, deliberately, watching Ryan's face tighten. "They're not the only proof I have." That got everyone's attention. The room stilled again, every eye darting between me and Ryan. He tried to laugh, but it came out harsh. "Kate, you're bluffing." I smiled faintly. "Am I?" The cliffhanger hung in the air like a storm about to break. Ryan's confidence faltered for the first time that night, his eyes narrowing as if he'd finally realized he wasn't in control of the stage anymore. And the family, once his audience, was no longer clapping. They were waiting, watching, questioning. And I knew this was only the beginning. The silence after my words stretched thin, like the pause before a storm. Ryan's smile was gone now, replaced by a tightness in his jaw I knew all too well. That was his tell. He only clenched like that when he'd been caught. "Kate," he said finally, his voice honeyed, "this isn't the place. These are family, not judges. Why humiliate us all over some paperwork?" I raised my brows. Humiliate us? Or humiliate you? A ripple of murmurs moved through the room. Ryan's eyes darted across the crowd, scanning their faces, gauging their loyalty. He must have realized then that admiration was slipping through his fingers like water. I stepped forward, calm, deliberate. "The papers are only the beginning," I said. My voice carried across the room, steady, unflinching. "You see, Ryan, you've always loved to talk. Bragging comes too easily to you. And unfortunately for you, I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. You don't always notice when someone's listening." Ryan stiffened. For the first time that night, real fear flickered across his face. "What are you doing?" I scrolled quickly, then tapped play. His voice filled the room, arrogant and unguarded. "She has no idea. I signed her name myself." "Perfect, right? She's too trusting to ever catch on. By the time she finds out, it'll be long gone." Gasps erupted around us. An aunt covered her mouth. My grandmother's eyes widened in horror. The room, once his audience, now recoiled from the man they thought they knew. Ryan lunged forward, his hand outstretched toward my phone. "That's fake," he snapped. "She edited that. You all know how easy it is to cut and splice recordings these days." I pulled the phone back, unshaken. "Really? Then let's hear more. I tapped again. His voice boomed louder, dripping with pride. The land was wasted sitting there. Now I get the money, the deals, the recognition. And Kate? She's just background noise. She'll never fight me. She doesn't have it in her. The betrayal landed heavy. The relatives shifted uncomfortably, their whispers sharp, angry, condemning. Ryan's mask was cracking, his desperation showing. Lies, he shouted. She's twisting this. You all know Kate. She's jealous. She never understood how to make something of what we have. I'm the one with vision, with ambition. She just wants to drag me down because she can't stand to see me succeed. The venom in his voice startled some, but the doubt in their eyes had already hardened into something else. Disgust. Disappointment. Outrage. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I let his rage burn, then spoke evenly. Jealous?
No, Ryan.
You betrayed me. You betrayed all of us. And the only one dragging you down is you. He sneered, his hands curling into fists. You think you're clever, don't you? Parading your little recordings like they mean something. You think you can ruin me in front of them? You're pathetic, Kate. Always have been.
Weak.
Naive. But his words only exposed the truth further. Every insult, every attempt to belittle me, was another mask falling. The family saw it too, his arrogance stripped bare. I turned to the relatives, lifting my chin. You've all heard his voice. You've seen the documents. And yet, I let my eyes sweep the room, lingering on Ryan. There's still more. Because what I've shown tonight is only part of the story. The rest, I paused deliberately, watching his face tighten, is worse. The room buzzed with whispers, a wave of restless energy. Ryan paled, though he tried to mask it with another hollow laugh. You're bluffing, he spat, trying to stretch the circus for attention. That's all this is. Your chance to play hero. I tilted my head, smiling faintly. If that's what you want to believe, then fine. But when the time comes, when the final truth comes out, you won't be able to laugh it off.
Not with them.
Not with me. Not with anyone. The silence that followed wasn't empty this time. It was heavy, electric. Every relative leaned forward, waiting, hungry for the final blow. And Ryan, for the first time, looked cornered, like a man who realized the stage he loved had become his prison. I slipped my phone back into my bag, my movements slow, deliberate. Enjoy the rest of your evening, Ryan, I said softly. It might be the last time they look at you with anything but contempt. His glare burned into me, his face twisted with rage and fear. But I didn't waver, because I knew this wasn't the end. This was just the unraveling. The final piece, the one he didn't even suspect, was waiting. And when I revealed it, he wouldn't just lose their admiration. He'd lose everything. The room hadn't recovered from the recordings when Ryan tried to claw back control. His words came faster, harsher, tinged with desperation. She's manipulating you, he barked at the family, his eyes wild. You've all known Kate your whole lives. She's always been dramatic, always needed attention. This is no different. She's spinning lies to make herself look like a victim. But the whispers had changed. No longer confused, they were sharp, angry. An uncle muttered, "That was your voice, Ryan." A cousin shook his head, disgusted. My grandmother's eyes were wet, but not with pride. Disappointment shimmered in her silence. I let the murmurs build, then raised my hand. The room quieted. You want to talk about manipulation, Ryan?
Fine.
Let's look at what you really did with the money. His face blanched. For the first time that night, he didn't have a ready smile, a slick line. He just stood frozen, jaw slack, as I pulled out the final folder from my bag. These, I said, flipping the pages open, are bank records. Transfers. Payments. All linked to accounts under your name. Large sums, deposited immediately after the land sale. I held them high, turning them so the relatives could see the stamped seals, the highlighted amounts. This isn't just about land. This is about greed. About selling our parents' legacy and pocketing the profits while lying to every one of us. Gasps echoed again, sharper this time. A cousin cursed under his breath. An aunt pressed her hand to her chest. The room erupted in low, furious whispers. He forged, he bragged, and he took the money for himself. Ryan lunged forward, his face twisted with fury. You went through my accounts? You had no right. No right? My voice cut through his anger. You had no right to steal from me. From us. To forge my name and desecrate our parents' trust.
Don't talk to me about rights, Ryan.
You gave those up when you chose betrayal. He slammed his fist against the table, rattling glasses. This is nonsense. You're all blind if you believe her. These papers could be fake, these transfers doctored. She's out to destroy me. But his words rang hollow now. No one rushed to his defense. No one laughed at his jokes or nodded at his charm. The admiration he had basked in earlier had curdled into something ugly, something he couldn't charm his way out of. Alina stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. They're not fake. I was there when we pulled them directly from the bank registrar. Every stamp, every line is official. You can deny it all you want, Ryan, but the proof is here, in black and white. Ryan's chest heaved, his composure shattering piece by piece. You think you can ruin me like this? You think anyone's going to believe your little crusade? They already do, I said simply. The relative silence was louder than shouting. Their faces told the story: anger, disappointment, betrayal. Even the ones who had admired Ryan most now looked at him as if he were a stranger. I straightened, my voice steady, deliberate. You didn't just sell land, Ryan. You sold trust. You sold the bond our parents built with blood and sweat. And you thought you could get away with it because you believed I wouldn't fight back. I let the words hang, then added, cold and precise, but this doesn't end here. I'm taking this to court. The declaration dropped like a stone in the room. Ryan's face drained of color, then flushed crimson. Court, he spat. You dragged me through court? Your own brother? You stopped being my brother the day you forged my name, I said, my tone unwavering. Now you're just another fraud waiting to be exposed. The relatives shifted, murmuring again, this time words of support for me. She's right. He crossed a line. This can't be forgiven. The tide had turned completely. Ryan was no longer the admired son, the charming brother. He was the thief, the liar, the outcast. His mask finally crumbled. He dropped the glass he'd been holding, shards scattering across the floor. You think you've won? He shouted, his voice raw. This family has always underestimated me. You don't understand what it takes to survive, to succeed. I did what had to be done, but no one applauded. No one agreed. His words fell flat against the wall of outrage surrounding him. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. My calm was sharper than his fury. You did what was selfish, and now you'll face the consequences. The silence after that was absolute. Ryan stood trembling, cornered, his arrogance stripped bare. The relatives didn't look at him with pride anymore. They looked at him with disgust. And in that silence, he must have realized the truth. His empire of lies had collapsed in a single night. I turned away, sliding the folder back into my bag. This isn't over, I said quietly, almost to myself. The real fight begins now. And as I walked out of the room, Alina at my side, I knew it was true. Ryan's humiliation was complete, but his downfall was only just beginning. The courtroom smelled of varnished wood and old paper, heavy with the weight of decisions that had changed lives long before mine. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my fingers pressed together, steadying my breath. Alina was behind me, a silent fortress of support. Across the aisle, Ryan sat with his lawyer, his suit crisp, his hair slicked back, his smirk sharp as a blade. For a moment, our eyes locked. He raised his chin, as if daring me to break. But I didn't. I just stared back, calm and unflinching. Because I wasn't here to win an argument. I was here to win the truth. The judge entered, gavel striking. Court is now in session. Ryan's lawyer started first. A smooth-talking man with silver hair, he stood confidently. Your Honor, this is nothing more than a family dispute blown out of proportion. My client, Ryan, acted in good faith. He believed his sister had agreed to the sale. If there was a misunderstanding, it was an honest one, not fraud. Ryan nodded solemnly, as if the picture of a reasonable man. He even dared to glance at me with mock pity, as though I were fragile, confused. My lawyer rose, calm but precise. Your Honor, what my client will show is not a misunderstanding. It is deliberate deception. Forged signatures, concealed bank transfers, and recorded admissions, all pointing to one thing: fraud carried out by Ryan against his own sister. The judge leaned forward. Proceed. First came the documents. The registrar's copies with the bold stamp of approval. My signature, except it wasn't mine. The lines were too neat, too precise. I remembered my hands trembling the first time I saw it. Now I felt only resolve. Ryan's lawyer objected, claiming the forgery was speculation. But the handwriting expert dismantled that in minutes, pointing out the inconsistencies, the unnatural strokes. This is not the plaintiff's signature, the expert concluded firmly. Then came the recordings. Ryan's voice filled the courtroom, arrogant and unguarded. She has no idea. I sign her name myself. Perfect, right? The words echoed off the walls like a confession carved in stone. Ryan shifted in his seat, his smirk fading, his eyes darting to the judge. Objection, his lawyer snapped. These could be doctored. But the audio analyst shook his head. No signs of tampering. Authentic. The room felt colder after that. Even the judge's expression hardened. Finally, the bank records. The highlighted transfers, the suspiciously timed deposits. Numbers didn't lie. The paper trail was undeniable. Ryan's mask cracked. He leaned forward, snapping. You don't understand. That money was mine. I deserved it after everything I've done for this family. The judge's gavel slammed down. Mr. Ryan, you will remain silent unless addressed. His lawyer tugged at his sleeve, whispering furiously. But Ryan couldn't help himself. His desperation spilled over, his composure collapsing. She's jealous, he shouted, pointing at me. Kate's always been jealous. She wants to ruin me because she can't stand that I'm successful, that I've actually done something with my life while she hides behind her pity and her friends. The courtroom buzzed with disapproval. The judge's glare silenced the noise. Enough. My lawyer rose again, calm as ever. Your Honor, this isn't about jealousy. This is about trust, property, and the law. My client has provided proof of forgery, proof of concealment, and proof of deceit. The defense has provided excuses. The judge shuffled the documents one last time. The silence stretched, heavy and expectant. Then came the words that sealed everything. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Kate. The transfer of property is hereby voided. Furthermore, the evidence presented will be forwarded for potential criminal proceedings against Ryan for forgery and fraud. The gavel struck, sharp and final. For a moment, I couldn't move. Relief flooded me, hot and overwhelming. My parents' land was safe. Their legacy was intact. Justice, real justice, had spoken. Across the aisle, Ryan's face was ashen, his composure shredded. He stood abruptly, shoving his chair back, his lawyer tugging at him in vain. This isn't over, he hissed, his eyes locking on mine. You think you've won? You haven't seen the last of me. I didn't rise to his threat. I simply gathered my papers, my movements slow, deliberate. Then I looked at him, meeting his fury with calm. You're right, Ryan, I said softly. This isn't over. But it's not me you should be afraid of anymore. It's the truth. He faltered, his rage faltering under the weight of the words. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. Not the smug brother who thought he was untouchable, but a man stripped bare, trembling at the collapse of everything he'd built on lies. As I left the courtroom, Alina squeezed my shoulder. You did it, she whispered. I nodded. In here, yes. But outside, he's already lost. He just doesn't know it yet. Because I understood something Ryan never did. A courtroom could deliver justice, but shame delivered exile. And that exile was waiting for him, just beyond those doors. The verdict echoed long after the gavel struck, carrying through our lives like a final, unshakable bell. The courtroom emptied, but the judgment lingered, woven into every glance, every whisper that followed Ryan wherever he went. At first, he tried to act as if nothing had changed. He walked into family gatherings with his head high, his voice loud, pretending the court's decision was just a technicality. But the room didn't respond the way it used to. The aunts who once praised his charm looked away. The cousins who laughed at his jokes kept their distance. My grandmother, who had always defended him, couldn't bring herself to meet his eyes. Silence replaced the admiration he once fed on. It was louder than applause had ever been. The land was safe now, restored in my name, but the true shift was in the family itself. Trust had broken like glass, and no matter how much Ryan tried to tape it back together, the cracks remained visible. Relatives whispered when he entered the room. Some didn't bother hiding their disgust. "You forged your sister's name," one uncle muttered at a gathering, shaking his head. "That's not just a mistake, Ryan. That's betrayal." He tried to argue, to spin it into misunderstanding. It was business. "You people don't understand the kind of deals I was handling, the opportunities. I did it for all of us." But no one believed him anymore. His words carried no weight. Without trust, his voice was just noise. Outside the family, the collapse spread wider. Neighbors who once admired his confidence now whispered behind his back. Old friends stopped returning his calls. Business partners, wary of scandal, distanced themselves quietly but firmly. Even the bartender at the local pub, who had always greeted him with warmth, now served him with a cold, wary glance. Reputation, I realized, was like glass too. Once shattered, it cut deeper the more you try to hold it together. Ryan grew restless, paranoid. He would storm out of the house at odd hours, returning with red eyes and clenched fists. Sometimes I heard him pacing in the yard, muttering to himself, his anger twisting into desperation. But what struck me most was how small he seemed now. The brother who once towered with arrogance, who filled every room with his confidence, now looked diminished. His shoulders hunched, his laughter hollow. He had built his identity on admiration, and now that it was gone, he didn't know who he was anymore. And me? I felt lighter. Not triumphant, not gleeful, but free. The burden of silence I had carried, the quiet planning, the patience, it had all paid off. Revenge wasn't the storm Ryan had expected. It wasn't screaming or violence. It was calm, precise, like water carving through stone. Alina said it best one evening, as we sat on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the hills. "You didn't just beat him, Kate. You erased the mask he wore. That's why he can't recover. Because everyone has finally seen the truth." I nodded, the weight of it settling. Ryan had always underestimated me, thinking silence meant weakness, that patience meant fear. But silence can be a weapon. Patience can be lethal. And in the end, those were the tools that destroyed him. Weeks passed, then months. Ryan grew more isolated with each passing day. He stopped showing up to family gatherings entirely. His calls to relatives went unanswered. Friends drifted away. The house that once echoed with his laughter now felt empty, haunted by the ghost of who he had been. Sometimes I wondered if he replayed those nights in his head, the party, the recordings, the bank records, the courtroom. Did he hear my voice each time, calm and unshaken, dismantling the empire of lies he had built? Did he regret underestimating me? Perhaps. Perhaps not. But it didn't matter anymore. Because while he was left with fragments of a reputation he could never glue back together, I was left with peace. The land was safe, the family stronger in their unity against deceit, and my parents' legacy untarnished. I didn't need his apology. I didn't need his downfall to feel sweet. The true revenge was in his reflection, every morning, when he looked in the mirror and saw not the admired brother, not the charming success story, but the liar everyone finally knew him to be. That was the punishment he could never escape. And in the quiet of my own heart, I understood something I hadn't before. Revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it waits. And sometimes, it simply lets the guilty destroy themselves once the truth is revealed. Ryan underestimated me. He thought silence meant surrender. but silence was my sharpest blade. And now, cut by his own arrogance, he would never forget it. It's strange looking back now. The house is quiet, the land stretching wide and steady outside my window, just as it always was. On the surface, nothing has changed. The trees still sway with the wind, the sun still dips behind the hills at dusk, and the walls still hold the laughter of memories long gone. And yet, everything is different, because the shadow that once threatened it all has finally been stripped away. Ryan's silence is louder than his voice ever was. I don't see him anymore. Not at gatherings, not in town, not even in passing. Word travels, of course, it always does. He lives in a smaller apartment now, away from the family home he once boasted about inheriting. The same people who once shook his hand with admiration now cross the street to avoid him. The same friends who raised their glasses to his success now whisper about his downfall. And I wonder, does he replay it in his mind? The party where I unmasked him, the courtroom where the gavel came down, the faces of our family as trust shattered like glass? Does he hear my voice when he closes his eyes, calm, deliberate, unyielding? Or has he buried it all beneath his anger, convincing himself he was the victim, that the world turned against him unfairly? I'll never know. And I don't need to. Because revenge isn't about watching someone beg for forgiveness or kneel at your feet. Real revenge is quieter. It's in the hollow spaces where their pride used to live. It's in the silence of empty rooms, the echo of a name that no longer commands respect. Ryan thought revenge was fire, but fire burns quick. Mine was water, patient, unstoppable, carving through stone until there was nothing left to stand against it. When I think about betrayal, I realize it cuts differently when it comes from family. A stranger's lie stings. A friend's deception wounds. But a sibling's betrayal? It rearranges you. It makes you question your memories, your blood, your own judgment. For a long time, I wondered if I had done something to deserve it.
Was I too trusting?
Too naive? Did I make it too easy for him?
But no.
Betrayal says more about the betrayer than the betrayed. Ryan didn't sell the land because I was weak. He did it because he was greedy. He forged my name not because I was silent, but because he mistook my silence for surrender. That was his greatest mistake. Silence isn't weakness. Silence listens. It watches. It gathers strength in shadows and waits for the right moment to strike. And when it does, it cuts deeper than anger ever could. There were nights when I wanted to confront him outright, to scream, to demand why he would treat me as nothing more than an obstacle. But I knew that rage would only feed his narrative. So I stayed quiet, patient. I let him dig his own grave while I gathered the proof to bury his lies with him. And when the moment came, I didn't need to shout.
I didn't need to cry.
I simply held up the truth like a mirror, and he destroyed himself on his own reflection. Now, with the land safe and the family healing, I finally feel the peace that had eluded me for months. My parents' legacy remains intact, their home still ours. And every time I walk through the fields, I feel them there, steady, proud, watching. They built this with love, with sacrifice. And I protected it with patience, with silence, with the kind of strength Ryan never understood. Do I forgive him? That's a question I've asked myself more than once. Forgiveness is supposed to be freeing, they say. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. And Ryan's consequences are his own, woven into the life he chose. If he ever asked for forgiveness, perhaps I'd give it, not for him, but for me. But until then, I am content to let silence answer the question for me. Because in the end, forgiveness is irrelevant when the damage is already done. What matters is this: I am no longer afraid. He can't take from me what is already mine. He can't rewrite the truth, not when it's etched into the memories of every relative, every witness, every page of court records. His lies are ashes. My silence is steel. And so, to those who listen now, to anyone who has been underestimated, silenced, betrayed, I will say this: do not mistake patience for weakness. Do not mistake silence for surrender. Sometimes the sharpest blade is the one you never see until it's too late. Ryan learned that the hard way. He underestimated me, and in doing so, he destroyed himself. And now, when he lies awake in the emptiness of his exile, he carries with him the one truth he can never escape: that I was silent, but never powerless.